My mother was stabbed 17 times. 17. Not in anger, in calculation. Each wound was deliberate, precise, like someone had studied exactly where to cut. She was 8 months pregnant with my youngest sister. The man who did it? My father. The man who promised to protect her? My own brother. And the worst part? I didn't know any of this until 3 hours later, standing in a hospital corridor, covered in blood that wasn't mine, yet. Like this video, subscribe to Betrayal Stories Lab, and comment your city or country below. Let's connect. Chapter 1. The message that broke everything. It started with a text I almost ignored. My name is Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I work in commercial real estate. Nothing glamorous, nothing criminal. But my family? They lived in a world I'd spent my entire adult life trying to escape. That Tuesday morning, I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost deleted it. But something made me open it. Your mom is in St. Mary's Hospital. Emergency ward. Come now. No name. No explanation. Just those words. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was 11:47 a.m. I know because I looked at my phone 3 times to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong. My hands went cold. Not the kind of cold you feel, the kind you are. Like ice had replaced your blood. I told my client I had a family emergency. I didn't even pack my things. I just left. The drive to St. Mary's took 14 minutes. It felt like hours. My mind was doing that thing where it catastrophizes everything. Car accident, heart attack, stroke. My mom was 56, healthy, walked 3 miles every morning. But this was different. The tone of that message, it wasn't concerned. It was urgent. It was wrong. When I got to the emergency room, the first person I saw was my brother, Colin. He was standing by the information desk, and he looked like a man who'd been through a war. His shirt was torn. His hands had dried blood on them. What happened? I asked. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else's body. Colin looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not sadness, not shock, something darker, something like shame mixed with rage. Dad did it, he said, just like that. For words, like he was telling me the weather. Did what? He stabbed her, Marcus. Mom. He stabbed her 17 times. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I think my brain actually stopped working for a few seconds because I couldn't process what those words meant in that sequence. Where? When? What? Bedroom. This morning. And I don't know why. I just got there after it happened. She was on the floor. He was gone. A nurse came over then. She had that expression, the one healthcare workers get when they're about to deliver information that shatters families. She told us my mother was in surgery. The baby, my sister, was also critical. 17 stab wounds to the torso, abdomen, and chest. The blade had come dangerously close to her heart. The pregnancy had saved her in some ways. The baby was a shield. But the baby was also dying. I remember sitting down because my legs stopped working. Colin sat next to me, and we didn't say anything for what felt like forever. Around us, the hospital was doing what hospitals do. People were being rushed. Machines were beeping. Families were crying. And we were just sitting there, waiting to see if our mother and sister would live or die. That's when Colin told me something that changed everything. It wasn't random, he said quietly. He planned it. What do you mean he planned it? There's something you don't know about Dad, Marcus. Something about the business. Something about who he really worked for. Before he could tell me more, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. But I did. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying. Marcus? It's Special Agent Rivera with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to talk about your father. And we need to talk about your brother Colin. Specifically about his connection to a black operations team you don't know exists. Your mother's attack wasn't personal. It was a message. The line went silent. My hands were shaking. Colin was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. And somewhere in an operating room down that hallway, my mother was bleeding out, and my baby sister was fighting for her life. I realized, in that moment, that I didn't know my own family at all. The FBI agent's name was Rivera. She was already at the hospital when I hung up the phone, which meant they'd been watching my family long before my mother ended up on an operating table. I met her in a small conference room on the third floor. Cold walls, fluorescent lights, a plastic table that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. Colin came with me. We didn't ask permission. We just walked in together, and Rivera didn't stop us. She was in her late 40s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who'd seen too much and forgotten nothing. She had a file in front of her, not a thin one. This was thick. Hundreds of pages. Your father, Victor Petrov, isn't actually your father, Rivera said. No preamble. No softening. Just the truth, hard and immediate. I felt the room tilt. What? Your mother, Eliza, was involved with a man named Adrian Volkov in the late 90s. Victor married her and raised you as his own. But Adrian was connected to organized crime. Russian mob. Mid-level operator, but smart. Dangerous. Your mother wanted out of that life. Adrian let her go. Victor gave her a normal life. Colin was rigid next to me. He already knew some of this. I could tell by the way his jaw was set. Your brother, Rivera continued, looking at Colin, was recruited 5 years ago. Black Ops. CIA-adjacent work. Counterintelligence operations targeting Russian crime families operating in the United States, including Adrian Volkov's network. I didn't have a choice, Colin said quietly. They found out about my connection to the family. They said I could work with them, or I could go to prison for association with organized crime. I chose to live. I wanted to be angry at him. I wanted to stand up and leave. But I couldn't move. Rivera opened the file. She slid photographs across the table. Adrian Volkov, a man in his 60s, silver hair, cold eyes. My biological grandfather. A man I'd never met. A man who'd apparently decided that today was the day to remind my mother that debts never expire. 3 weeks ago, Rivera said, Adrian found out that your brother Colin was working undercover against him. Our surveillance picked up conversations. Adrian was furious. But he couldn't touch Colin. Colin was already protected, already exposed. So he decided to hurt the people Colin loved. My mother, I whispered. Your mother was the message, Rivera confirmed. 17 stab wounds. 17. One for each year she'd been hidden from Adrian's world. One for each year she'd tried to forget he existed. He wanted Colin to know that family loyalty was the only currency that mattered. That running was temporary. That blood always finds blood. Where is Adrian now? Colin's voice was ice. That's the problem, Rivera said. He's gone. Left the country 48 hours ago. We're tracking him, but he's got resources. Money. Connections. He could be anywhere. I looked at my brother, and for the first time in my life, I saw the soldier underneath the skin he wore around me. Something hard. Something trained. Something capable of things I didn't want to understand. There's something else, Rivera said. She pulled out another photograph. A woman. Early 30s. Beautiful. Dangerous looking. This is Natalie Volkov, Adrian's daughter. Your aunt, technically. She was the one who stabbed your mother. The room started spinning. She's still in the country, Rivera continued. She's the logical one. The cold one. She's the one who understood that your mother had to pay the price for Colin's betrayal of the family. Natalie's been trained in the family business since childhood. She's a killer, Mr. Marcus. A professional. And she has a specific assignment. What assignment? I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. She's been tasked with eliminating anyone who testifies against the Volkov organization. Your mother is the only witness who can place Adrian at the planning stage of this attack. The only one who heard him say her name. The only one who can destroy him in a courtroom. Colin stood up suddenly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Then we protect her, he said. You put her in protective custody. You move her. You do whatever it takes. We will, Rivera said. But there's a complication. Your father, Victor, he disappeared 6 hours ago, right after your mother was admitted. We found evidence that he's been in contact with Natalie Volkov. Text messages, payment transfers, photographs. The words didn't make sense. No, I said. Victor. He wouldn't. He would, Rivera said quietly. Because Victor isn't what you think he is either. He's been working as a middleman for the Volkov organization for 15 years. Your parents' marriage wasn't an escape from the mob. It was a cover for something much deeper. I looked at Colin. He was staring at the photograph of Natalie Volkov like he was memorizing her face. I need to make a call, he said. To who? I asked. To the only person who can fix this, Colin said. My commanding officer. My Black Ops handler. The one person in this entire situation who answers to nobody but himself. He pulled out his phone. His hands were steady. His eyes were cold. And I realized, watching him dial, that my brother wasn't just a soldier. He was something else entirely. The man on the phone didn't have a name. Colin just called him Sir, and they spoke in a language I didn't recognize. Russian, maybe Belarusian. Short sentences. Specific. Colin listened more than he talked. And when he hung up, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear mixed with certainty. We have 3 hours, Colin said. After that, Natalie Volkov moves. She relocates. We lose her. What are you going to do? I asked. What I was trained to do, he said. But I'm not doing it alone. We left the hospital without seeing our mother. We couldn't. Not yet. The nurse told us she was still in surgery. They'd managed to stabilize the baby, but the internal bleeding was severe. Every hour mattered. Every heartbeat was borrowed time. Colin drove. Fast. His car was a black sedan, nondescript, the kind of vehicle designed to be forgotten the moment you look at it. He didn't explain where we were going. He just drove through the city, taking turns that seemed random until they weren't. We ended up at a warehouse district in South Harbor, the kind of place where people made things disappear. There was a man waiting for us. He was standing outside a concrete building with no windows, smoking a cigarette like he had all the time in the world. He was maybe 50, built like a construction worker, but his eyes had that same quality Collins had developed. Trained. Lethal. Professional. Marcus, this is Hunter, Collins said. He works with me. Hunter didn't shake my hand. He barely looked at me. He just nodded at Colin and said, The girl's at the Meridian Hotel. Room 1847. She's been there since yesterday. 2 guys with her. One at the door, one at the window. She's not planning to leave. Because she doesn't think she has to, Collins said. She thinks Victor's going to keep my mother quiet. She thinks the family's protected her. Is it? Hunter asked. No, Collins said. The organization's in chaos. Adrian's out of the country, communications are scrambled, and Natalie made a critical mistake. What mistake? I asked. Colin looked at me. She assumed family loyalty means something. She assumed Victor would actually go through with killing my mother to protect the organization. She didn't account for one thing. What? Victor doesn't actually care about the organization. He never did. He cared about my mother. And when push came to shove, his cover broke. Hunter flicked his cigarette away. He's at the precinct. 3rd District. He walked in an hour ago and asked for protective custody. Told them everything. The operation, the payments, Natalie, the whole structure. Colin closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, I saw something shift in his expression. Relief mixed with something darker. Good, he said. Then we don't have a choice anymore. We went inside the warehouse. It was massive, empty except for a metal table and several cases of equipment. Hunter opened one. Inside were laptops, phones, surveillance devices, technology one didn't have names for. He pulled up a live feed on one of the screens. The Meridian Hotel. Room 1847. I could see Natalie Volkov sitting at a desk, working on a laptop. She was calm, methodical. She was reviewing files, photographs of potential witnesses, court schedules, security details. She was planning, calculating, deciding who lived and who died. The police will move on Victor's statement, Hunter said. They'll get a warrant. They'll try to arrest Natalie quietly, but they'll be too slow. She'll run. And once she runs, she becomes a ghost. We lose her. Then we move first, Collins said. How? I asked. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand why my brother was standing in an abandoned warehouse with a man I'd never met, planning something that felt like it existed in a world I had no access to. Colin turned to me. You're going to help us. I can't. You don't have a choice, he said, not unkindly. Because Natalie has a list, and your name is on it. Third, after our mother and the prosecutor assigned to Adrian's case. The room went quiet. She's planning to kill me? I asked. The words sounded like they belonged to someone else. She's planning to ensure loose ends don't exist, Colin corrected. You're my brother. You know about the family. Your leverage. And once she realizes the family's falling apart, leverage becomes liability. Hunter was already typing. We have 42 minutes before the police get a warrant. If we're going to do this, we do it now. Colin looked at me. Are you willing to fight back? Or are we just going to run? I thought about my mother on that operating table. I thought about my sister, not yet born, fighting for her life. I thought about my entire existence being built on lies and blood and organized crime. What do you need me to do? I asked. Colin smiled. A real smile, not the careful expression he usually wore around me. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother as he actually was. Not the man trying to be normal, not the man trying to hide, but the soldier underneath. You're going to help us bring her in, he said. And then you're going to tell the truth. Hunter handed me a phone. Not my phone. A burner. Encrypted. Something that existed outside the normal world of cellular networks and digital footprints. You're going to call her, Hunter said. You're going to pretend you don't know anything. You're going to sound scared. I am scared, I said. Good. Use it, Colin said. Natalie can smell weakness. She can smell fear. But she can't smell truth if it's wrapped in the right kind of panic. They briefed me on what to say. The script was simple. I'd gotten a mysterious message from my mother's hospital. A message warning me that someone was looking for me, that I needed to meet with someone who could protect me. That person would be Hunter, posing as a fixer from the organization. My job was to get Natalie to agree to a meeting, to draw her out of the hotel room where she felt safe. It was a trap, a good one. The kind of trap that only works if the person walking into it believes they're the one setting it. I dialed the number Hunter gave me. It rang twice before she answered. Yes. Her voice was calm, almost bored, like she was waiting for a telemarketer. Natalie. I kept my voice shaking. It wasn't hard. This is Marcus Petrov. There was a pause. I could hear her processing, deciding if I was a threat or an opportunity. How did you get this number? She asked. My mother, I lied. Before everything happened, she gave me a list of people to contact if anything ever went wrong. Emergency contacts. Your name was on it. Another pause. Longer this time. Your mother is unconscious, Marcus. She can't make contact with anyone. I know, I said. But she made the list years ago. She always said family protects family. She said if I ever needed help, real help, I should call you. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. Your mother said that? She did. I continued. And I need help. Right now, there are people looking for me. People who know what happened. People who want to use me against the family. Against Adrian. Who's looking for you? Natalie asked. I don't know their names. But they said if I didn't cooperate, they'd go to the police. They said they'd testify. They said they'd destroy everything. Natalie was quiet for so long I thought the line had dropped. Where are you? She finally asked. Harbor Point. There's a warehouse. My father, Victor, he had a contact there. Someone who could help move me. Hide me. But I don't trust him anymore. I don't trust anyone. I need to know the family will protect me. That Adrian will protect me. Give me the address, Natalie said. I recited the warehouse location. Hunter nodded at me, confirming it was the right one. The one they'd prepared. There will be someone there to meet you, Natalie said. Give them your phone. Tell them everything you've told me. They'll take it from there. How long? I asked. 20 minutes, she said. And Marcus? Don't try to be clever. People who try to be clever in this family end up hurt. Understand. I understand, I said. She hung up. Hunter took the phone and disconnected it. He handed it to Colin, who crushed it under his boot and threw the pieces in a metal waste bin. "She's coming," Colin said. But Hunter was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. "What?" Colin asked. She answered too fast. She accepted the story too easily. Natalie Volkov doesn't accept anything at face value. She questions. She probes. She doesn't just believe. Colin's jaw tightened. "You think it's a trap?" "I think," Hunter said slowly, "that she already knew Marcus existed outside of the family structure. I think Adrian already briefed her. I think she's been expecting us to do exactly this." "Then what do we do?" I asked. "We adapt," Colin said. He was already moving, pulling equipment from the cases, checking weapons I pretended not to see. "We make sure the trap is bigger than her trap. We make sure we're 3 moves ahead instead of 1. He looked at me. "You still in?" I thought about my mother. I thought about my sister who might never breathe on her own. I thought about a lifetime of lies stacked on top of each other like a foundation made of rotting wood. "Yeah," I said. "I'm in." Hunter was already communicating with someone through an earpiece I hadn't noticed him wearing. His voice was clipped, professional, giving instructions in a language I didn't understand. This wasn't improvisation. This was a contingency plan. This was something they'd prepared for before I ever made that phone call. "She's moving," Hunter said. "She just left the hotel. 2 cars. For associates. She's bringing backup." "How many?" Colin asked. "More than we expected," Hunter said. Colin looked at me. "Then we don't play their game. We change the rules." He pulled up something on one of the laptops. A floor plan of the warehouse. Multiple entry points. Multiple exit routes. He was recalculating, repositioning, preparing for a fight that had just become infinitely more complicated. Outside, the sun was setting. Harbor Point was turning gray and empty, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody ever asked questions. And I realized, standing there with my brother and a man who might save us or kill us, that I'd already made a choice that couldn't be unmade. The only direction now was forward. Colin opened a secondary laptop. On the screen appeared a live feed from inside the warehouse, security cameras Hunter had installed before we arrived. We watched as a black SUV pulled up to the loading dock. Natalie emerged first. She moved like someone who'd studied violence as an art form. Behind her came 4 men, all armed, all positioned like they'd trained for this exact scenario. "She's not here to negotiate," Colin said. "She's here to eliminate a problem." But then something unexpected happened. A second vehicle pulled up behind Natalie's SUV. A police cruiser. 2 officers stepped out, hands on their weapons, moving with the careful precision of cops who'd been informed they were walking into danger. Hunter cursed under his breath. "Victor's already talking to them." "That changes everything," Colin said. Natalie didn't panic. She didn't run. Instead, she did something far more disturbing. She walked straight toward the police officers like she'd been expecting them. We watched on the screen as she raised her hands. She was smiling. Actually smiling. One of the officers approached her cautiously, and she said something we couldn't hear through the silent feed. The officer's expression shifted. He looked confused, then concerned. He reached for his radio. "What is she doing?" I whispered. Colin leaned closer to the screen. "She's not surrendering. She's selling a story." The officers lowered their weapons. Natalie was gesturing toward the warehouse. Toward us. Toward where I was standing, watching this unfold in real time like it was happening on a television screen instead of 30 yards away. One of the officers spoke into his radio. Within seconds, 3 more police cars arrived. Then a detective's vehicle. Then an unmarked sedan that could only mean federal agents. "They're coming inside," Hunter said quietly. "All of them. Together." Colin stood up. His face had gone very still. "She didn't come to kill us," he said. "She came to trap us with the authorities. She's going to claim we kidnapped her. She's going to claim we forced her to come here. She's going to turn this around so that we look like the criminals and she walks free." "Can she do that?" I asked. "She can try," Colin said. "And it might work, because nobody here knows the truth except us and Agent Rivera." And Rivera's at the hospital with our mother. The warehouse door opened. Officers flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Natalie walked behind them like she was the victim being rescued instead of the perpetrator who'd stabbed our mother 17 times. Colin didn't resist. Neither did Hunter. They were on their knees, hands behind their heads, before I could process what was happening. "You, the civilian," one of the officers pointed at me. "Step away from them." I stepped back slowly. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't part of the plan. A detective approached me. She was in her 50s, hard eyes, the kind of person who'd seen enough manipulation to recognize it instantly. But she was looking at me like I was already guilty by association. "Your name?" she asked. "Marcus Petrov." Her expression shifted. "Recognition. You're connected to Victor Petrov, the suspect in the stabbing case." "I'm his son," I said. "That's what I thought," she said. She nodded to another officer. "Cuff him." As they were putting handcuffs on me, Natalie walked past. She caught my eye for just a second, and in that second, I understood something that changed everything. She wasn't smiling because her plan was working. She was smiling because something else was happening, something bigger than any of us had anticipated. The federal agent who'd been standing in the back of the group stepped forward. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back severely, moving with the kind of authority that made even the local police step aside. "Detective," she said, "I need a word with you." "Outside." They stepped away. Through the warehouse window, I could see them arguing. The detective was shaking her head. The federal agent was pointing at documents on her phone. Then, slowly, the detective's expression changed from certainty to confusion. She came back inside. She looked at Colin, then at Hunter, then at me. "Release them," she said to her officers. "What?" one of the younger cops said. "But now," she said. The handcuffs came off. Colin stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving Natalie. The federal agent approached Natalie. "Ms. Volkov, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of the Organized Crime Control Act. You have the right to remain silent." Natalie's smile finally faded. As they were reading her rights, she looked at Colin. And for the first time, I saw fear in her expression. "Your mother woke up during surgery," the federal agent said quietly to me. She gave a full statement to Agent Rivera. She identified everyone involved, including her own husband. She also identified her biological daughter, your half-sister, who helped coordinate the attack. I felt the floor shift beneath me. My half-sister. There was someone else. Someone I'd never met. Someone who'd been involved in this from the beginning. Colin's expression confirmed it. He knew. He'd known all along. And this wasn't the trap we'd been walking into. This was the setup for something far darker. The federal agent's name was Director Kessler. She wasn't just FBI. She was something above that. The kind of person who showed up when cases touched territories that required absolute discretion. She took Colin and me to a separate room in the warehouse. Hunter stayed behind, already being processed by local authorities, but with a subtle nod that suggested he'd be released within the hour. "Your mother is asking for you," Kessler said as soon as the door closed. "But first, you need to understand what you're actually involved in." She pulled up files on a tablet. Photographs. Documents. A family tree that made my head spin. "Adrian Volkov had 2 children with his first wife before he met your mother," Kessler continued. "Natalie was one of them. But the other was a son, Julian Volkov. He's 43 years old. He's been operating under a false identity for the past decade. He's been embedded in the federal court system." "Embedded?" I asked. "As what?" "As a judge," Kessler said. "Judge Julian Morrison. He's been presiding over organized crime cases for 8 years. He's thrown out evidence. He's dismissed charges. He's ensured that his father's organization remained untouchable." Colin didn't look surprised, which meant he knew this too. "Why are you telling us this?" I asked. "Because," Kessler said, "your mother's testimony doesn't just take down Natalie and Adrian. It exposes Julian. It means his entire career collapses. It means every case he's ever presided over becomes suspect. It means hundreds of convictions could be overturned. She paused, letting that sink in. Which means, she continued, that Julian Volkov now has the most powerful motivation to ensure your mother never testifies. Money can be replaced. Family can be scattered. But a federal judge's career? That's not a problem that goes away quietly. I understood then why my brother had brought me into this. Why Colin had trained. Why he'd become a soldier. Why he'd built connections to people like Hunter. Because this wasn't a simple crime. This was institutional corruption. This was a war that required more than evidence. It required people willing to fight it. Where is Julian now? Colin asked. That's the problem, Kessler said. After your mother's statement, after we moved on Natalie, Julian disappeared. He left his chambers at noon. He canceled his docket. He withdrew $70,000 in cash from his personal accounts. He's running. Running where? I asked. That's what you're going to help us figure out, Kessler said. She turned the tablet toward us. On it was a photograph of a woman. She was in her late 20s, beautiful in a way that seemed designed to manipulate, with dark eyes and a practiced smile. This is Isabella Volkov, Kessler said. Julian's daughter. She works as a gallery manager in the arts district. She's also your half-sister, your biological half-sister. She helped coordinate the attack on your mother. I stared at the photograph, at the face of someone I'd never met who'd participated in destroying my family. How do you know she was involved? I asked. Financial records. Communications. She transferred money to Natalie's accounts 2 days before the attack. She sent text messages coordinating timing. She even visited your parents' house the night before, which we know because of security footage from a neighbor's camera. Colin was very still. She visited them? She did, Kessler confirmed. For approximately 47 minutes. We don't know what happened during that visit. But your father, Victor, left the house immediately after she departed. He went to a bar. He drank heavily. Then he went home and stabbed your mother. The room felt like it was collapsing inward. So Victor wasn't acting alone, I said slowly. Isabella manipulated him somehow. Isabella is very good at manipulation, Kessler said. She learned from her family. She has a psychology degree from Columbia. She worked in family therapy before she went to work at the gallery. She knows how to read people, how to exploit weakness. Colin leaned forward. Where is she? That's the other problem, Kessler said. She disappeared the same time Julian did. We have surveillance showing her leaving her apartment with 2 large suitcases. We tracked her to the airport. She boarded a flight to Toronto under an alias. After that, she vanishes. She's helping her father run, Colin said. Almost certainly, Kessler agreed. Which means your mother is still in danger. Because if Julian reaches out to Isabella, and if Isabella is willing to complete what Natalie started, she didn't need to finish the sentence. We need to find them before they leave North America, Kessler continued. We need to stop Julian from establishing himself in another jurisdiction where his federal credentials might still carry weight. And we need Isabella to testify about her father's involvement in coordinating this attack. How do we do that? I asked. Kessler looked at Colin. Your handler, the person you called from the hospital, he's already building a team. Hunter's already been released. You're going to work with them. Marcus, you're going to stay close to your mother at the hospital. You're going to be her protection, yes, but you're also going to be the bait. Bait? I said. Julian won't abandon his daughter, Kessler said. And his daughter won't abandon her grandfather entirely. There are certain family restaurants they've used for decades. Certain locations that matter to them emotionally. We have reason to believe they'll make contact at one of those locations within the next 72 hours. And when they do? Colin asked. When they do, Kessler said, we're going to be waiting. And you're going to help us close a case that's been bleeding into the justice system for 10 years. She stood up. Your mother's in recovery now. Stable condition. The baby survived. Your sister is going to be okay. She wants to see you both. As we walked toward the door, Kessler called after us. One more thing, she said. Your father, Victor. He's cooperating fully. He's also agreed to testify. He's agreed to everything, in exchange for protection and a reduced sentence. But he asked for one thing. What? I asked. He asked if you'd visit him. He said he wanted to explain. He said he wanted you to understand why he did what he did. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, toward the stairs that would lead me to my mother. But I already knew I would visit him. Because understanding why didn't change what he'd done. But it might change what happened next. My mother's hospital room was on the 4th floor. ICU. The kind of place where machines breathed for you and monitors tracked every heartbeat, like it was a negotiation between life and death. She was awake, conscious. Her eyes were fixed on the window, watching the city lights come on as evening turned into night. There were bandages across her torso, visible where her hospital gown gaped. 17 places where a blade had found flesh. 17 chances for her to die that she'd somehow survived. When she heard me enter, she didn't turn immediately. She just made a small sound, acknowledgement, relief, something between a sob and a laugh. "Hi, Mom," I said. She turned then, slowly, carefully, like movement hurt in ways that went deeper than physical pain. When she saw me, tears started streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said, the first words out of her mouth. Not about her injuries, not about the attack, about being sorry. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I never told you about Adrian. I'm sorry I married a man who was involved with all of this." I took her hand carefully, aware of the 4 lines, the monitors, the fragility that had been imposed on her body. "You don't have to apologize," I said. "I do," she said. "Because you and Colin, you got pulled into my past, into my mistakes. Because I thought I could just disappear from that world and it would disappear from me. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I didn't speak, if I just lived a normal life, nobody would remember I existed." "But they did," I said. "Adrian never forgot," she said. "And I think Victor never fully left the organization either. He told me the truth today. He said he was supposed to protect me from them, but instead he was working for them. He said he was always supposed to be a bridge between my world and theirs. He said the marriage was never real. It was a business arrangement. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just listened. He cried when he confessed." My mother continued. "Actually cried. He said he loved me anyway. He said that somewhere along the way, the business arrangement became real. He said he couldn't go through with it anymore. He said that when Adrian ordered him to make me disappear, something inside him broke. So he confessed," I said. "He confessed," she confirmed. "He gave them everything. Names, dates, operations. He destroyed his own world because he couldn't destroy me." There was a monitor beeping steadily. Her heart rate, I assumed. Steady, strong, determined to keep beating despite everything trying to stop it. "The baby's doing well," my mother said. "They did an ultrasound this morning. Everything's developing normally. She's going to be okay. A girl. My sister. A person who'd been stabbed in the womb and lived. What are you going to call her?" I asked. "I don't know yet," my mother said. "I want to wait until she's born. I want to see her face first. I want to make sure she's real before I name her." We sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, the city continued its rhythms. Cars moved through streets. People went to dinner. Lives continued as if the world hadn't fractured. "Agent Kessler told you about Julian," my mother said. It wasn't a question. "She did," I said. "I had no idea," my mother said. "I had no idea Adrian had another child. I had no idea there was a judge helping the organization. I feel like I'm just now learning who my own family actually is." "You're not responsible for what they do," I said. "Aren't I?" she asked. "I'm the reason Adrian came back into our lives. I'm the reason Natalie knew where to find us. I'm the reason this happened." "No," I said firmly. "You're the victim here, not the cause." My mother closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I have to testify. They want me to testify at trial. Against Natalie. Against Adrian once they capture him. Against Julian. Are you willing to do that?" I asked. "I'm terrified," she said. "But yes. Because if I don't, they win. If I stay silent, Adrian walks free. Natalie walks free. Julian goes back to his bench and continues corrupting the system. And the next person Adrian decides to punish, the next family he decides to destroy, they won't have a choice. They'll be victims too. I squeezed her hand gently. You're stronger than all of them. I don't feel strong, she said. I feel like I'm falling apart and being held together by machines and medication and the sheer stubbornness of wanting to live. That's what strength is, I said. A doctor knocked on the open door. She was Asian, mid-40s, the kind of competent presence that made you believe everything would be okay, even when you knew it might not be. Mrs. Eliza, the doctor said, I need to do a quick check. Marcus, you'll have to step out for a few minutes. I nodded. I stood up slowly, letting go of my mother's hand. Come back soon, she said. I will, I promised. I stepped into the hallway. Colin was waiting there, leaning against the wall, his expression unreadable. Kessler's team has a lead, he said quietly. Isabella used her credit card at a restaurant in Burlington, Vermont. 3 hours ago. It was a deliberate move. She wanted us to know they're heading north. Why would she do that? I asked. Because she's communicating with us, Colin said. She's telling us she's not running blind. She's telling us she has a plan. She's telling us the game isn't over. What do we do? I asked. We go north, Colin said. We find them before they cross the border. We bring them back. And we make sure my mother gets to testify. He looked at me. You ready? I looked back through the window at my mother. At a woman who'd survived 17 stab wounds and a lifetime of lies. At a woman who was choosing to fight instead of hide. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. The drive to Burlington took 6 hours. Colin drove while I sat in the passenger seat, watching the landscape shift from city to highway to rural darkness. Hunter was in the back seat, working a laptop, tracking Isabella's movements through security cameras and financial transactions that Kessler's team had flagged. She's being deliberately visible, Hunter said around mile marker 200. Every transaction leaves a trail. Every camera catch is deliberate. She wants us following. Why? I asked. Because she's buying time, Colin said. She's leading us away from Julian. While we're chasing her north, he's probably heading south or east. Different airports, different borders, different extraction routes. So we're being used, I said. Exactly, Colin said. She's the decoy. We stop her, we think we've won. But Julian's already gone. Then why are we going? I asked. Colin didn't answer immediately. He was quiet for a long stretch of highway, watching the darkness ahead. Because she's still dangerous, he finally said. Because she helped coordinate an attack that almost killed our mother. Because she helped her father manipulate Victor into becoming a weapon. And because Kessler believes if we can get Isabella to flip, she'll tell us exactly where Julian's headed. Around midnight, we pulled into a small town called Stowe. Population under 5,000. The kind of place where tourists came to see fall foliage and locals kept to themselves. Hunter had tracked Isabella to a bed and breakfast on the outskirts, the Riverside Inn, a Victorian building that looked like it belonged in a Christmas movie. We didn't go in directly. That would be too obvious, too dangerous. Instead, Kessler's team coordinated with the local FBI field office. They set up surveillance. They positioned agents at every exit. They turned the entire inn into a carefully constructed trap. Colin and I waited in an unmarked vehicle, watching the building through thermal imaging. Around 2 a.m., 2 figures moved through the second floor. One was Isabella. The other was a man we assumed was Julian. They're packing, Hunter said through the earpiece. They're getting ready to leave. Let them get to their car, Kessler's voice came through. We stop them when they're exposed. But then something unexpected happened. A third figure emerged from one of the rooms. An elderly man. Thin. Moving slowly but deliberately. Adrian Volkov. Isabella's grandfather. The man who'd started all of this by never letting go of a past that should have stayed buried. Where the hell did he come from? Hunter muttered. He was with them the whole time, Colin said quietly. They didn't scatter. They stayed together. Adrian reached the car first, A silver sedan parked at the side of the building. He fumbled with keys. Isabella and Julian moved behind him, watching the street. "Go," Kessler said. Federal agents emerged from the darkness. Weapons drawn. Lights flashing. The sedan's doors were yanked open before Adrian could even turn the ignition. But then Julian moved. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He simply reached into his jacket and pulled out a small revolver. He pressed it to Adrian's temple. "Back off," Julian said. His voice was calm, professional, the voice of a man who'd spent years learning how to control rooms. "Everyone back off, or I kill him." The agents froze. "Julian," one of the agents called out. "Don't do this. We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out," Julian said. "My life is over anyway. My career is finished. My daughter's future is destroyed. The only thing I have left is the ability to choose how this ends." He looked at Isabella. She was standing perfectly still, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," he said to her. "I'm sorry I brought you into this world. I'm sorry I taught you to believe that family loyalty meant destroying other families." "Dad, don't," Isabella said. For the first time, I heard genuine emotion in her voice. Fear, regret, humanity. "This ends now," Julian said. But before anyone could move, Adrian made his own choice. The old man twisted sideways, driving his elbow into Julian's ribs. The revolver went off, a single shot that echoed through the quiet Vermont night. Adrian fell. But Julian fell too, knocked off balance by the old man's desperate gamble. Agents swarmed. The scene erupted into controlled chaos. Within seconds, Julian was on the ground, handcuffed, bleeding from a wound on his side where he'd been struck during the struggle. Adrian was also on the ground, but he wasn't moving. The bullet from his own son's gun had caught him in the chest. Paramedics rushed in. They worked on Adrian frantically, but his eyes were already unfocused. He was dying, and he seemed to know it. Isabella didn't resist. She let herself be cuffed. She didn't look at her father. She didn't look at her grandfather. She just looked at the ground, like she was watching her entire world collapse into itself. Colin and I watched from the vehicle as they were loaded into separate FBI cars. Hunter was already communicating with Kessler. "Adrian's critical," Hunter said. "They're flying him by helicopter to a trauma center in Montreal. He probably won't make it." "And Julian?" I asked. "Stable," Hunter said. "The wound's not life-threatening. He'll live to stand trial." We drove back to the hospital in silence. Not the comfortable silence of two people at peace, but the heavy silence of people processing the weight of what they'd witnessed. Adrian had killed his own stepdaughter's husband to keep her hidden. He'd orchestrated the stabbing of a woman he claimed to love. And in the end, he'd saved his own daughter from killing herself by throwing his body in front of a gun. It was almost Shakespearean in its tragedy. When we got back to the hospital, Kessler was waiting in my mother's room. My mother was awake, watching the sun rise through the window. "Your father's asking for you," Kessler said to me. "He's in protective custody at the Federal Detention Center. He says it's urgent." I looked at my mother. She nodded slowly. "Go," she said. "Listen to what he has to say. You deserve to know the truth, all of it." The Federal Detention Center was designed to make you feel small. Gray walls. Fluorescent lights that never turned off. The sound of locks clicking shut behind you at every checkpoint. Colin came with me, but Kessler insisted we meet Victor alone in a visitation room. Just me and the man who'd raised me, but wasn't actually my father. Victor looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. He was still a large man, still carried himself with the posture of someone who'd once been dangerous. But something had collapsed inside him. The pretense, maybe. The careful construction of the normal life he'd been living. He was already sitting when I entered. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. Orange jumpsuit. A man awaiting sentencing for attempted murder of the woman he claimed to love. "Marcus," he said. "Just my name. Nothing else." I sat down across from him. There was a barrier between us. Glass, metal, the entire infrastructure of the criminal justice system made physical. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked. "Because you deserve to know," Victor said. Not for my sake. For yours. Because you've been living in a story that wasn't true, and I'm the one who wrote that lie. He paused. His hands were shaking slightly. I was 34 years old when I first met Adrian Volkov, Victor continued. I was working as a business consultant for a shipping company. A legitimate company, or so I thought. But the shipping company was moving more than cargo. It was moving money, weapons, people. Adrian approached me and made an offer. Help manage the logistics of his organization, and I'd make more money in a year than I could make in a decade of legitimate work. You accepted, I said. I did, Victor confirmed. I was young. I was ambitious. I was stupid. I thought I could profit from crime without becoming a criminal. I thought I could separate the work from the person I wanted to be. He looked at me directly. I was wrong. So you worked for him, I said. For years. For 12 years, Victor said. I became good at it. Very good at it. I learned how to move money through international accounts. I learned how to coordinate shipments so they'd avoid customs. I learned how to eliminate problems, not literally kill, but remove obstacles. Fire people. Break contracts. Intimidate competition. And then you met my mother, I said. I did, Victor said. His voice changed. Became quieter. Eliza was everything I wasn't. Kind. Genuine. Beautiful without trying to be. She'd just gotten out of a relationship with Adrian. She was terrified of him. She wanted a normal life. She wanted to disappear. So you offered her that, I said. I did more than offer, Victor said. I made a deal with Adrian. I told him I wanted out. I told him I wanted to walk away from the organization, but I couldn't just leave. I knew too much. He'd have to make it worth my while to stay silent. What did he say? I asked. He said I could leave, Victor said, but only if I did him one favor. He said he wanted Eliza monitored. He wanted to know she was safe. He wanted to know she wouldn't testify against him or share information about his operations. He said if I married her and kept watch over her, he'd let me disappear into a normal life. He'd protect me from the other members of his organization who might want revenge for my defection. The room felt very cold suddenly. You married my mother so you could spy on her, I said. I married your mother, Victor said carefully, because I fell in love with her. But yes, initially, it was a transaction. Adrian's condition for letting me out of the organization. Did she know? I asked. No, Victor said. And that's the part I'll regret for the rest of my life. Because the marriage became real for me somewhere along the way. The spying stopped mattering. The organization stopped mattering. You were born, and suddenly I had a son, and I wasn't that man anymore. I was just Dad. Just a father trying to keep his family safe. He leaned forward, his voice becoming urgent. But Adrian never forgot the arrangement, Victor continued. And when I refused to let him use your mother as leverage against his competitors, when I refused to help him manipulate her into testifying falsely, he decided the arrangement was over. He decided the only way to ensure her silence was to ensure her death. So he ordered you to kill her, I said. He ordered me to kill her, Victor confirmed. And Marcus, I almost did. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I stood in that bedroom, and I almost drove a knife into your mother's heart 17 times because I was too afraid of Adrian to refuse. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. But then, Victor said, something broke inside me. Something I didn't know was still there. And I realized that the man Adrian wanted me to be, that person had to die, had to be destroyed. So I called the police. I confessed. I gave them everything they needed to bring the entire organization down. Because you loved her, I said. Because I loved her, Victor confirmed. And because I was tired of being a lie. He sat back. His hands were steady now, like confession had given him some kind of peace. I'm going to prison, Marcus, he said. For a long time. I've committed crimes I can't undo. But I can do one thing. I can make sure your mother gets to testify. I can make sure Adrian and Julian and Natalie face real consequences. I can make sure the next person Adrian tries to destroy has a fighting chance. That doesn't fix what you did, I said. It doesn't, Victor agreed. But it's the only redemption available to me. He looked at me with eyes that seemed older than they should be. "I need you to tell your mother something," he said. "I need you to tell her that the last 15 years, they were real. The life we built, the family we created, that wasn't a lie. That was the only true thing I've ever done." I left the detention center without saying goodbye to Victor. There was nothing left to say. He'd given me the truth. What I did with it was my choice now. 3 months passed. 3 months of legal proceedings, court dates, and testimony. My mother testified against Natalie, against Adrian, who'd miraculously survived his gunshot wound and was now permanently paralyzed, and against the organization that had tried to erase her. Julian took a plea deal. 20 years. He'd cooperate with federal prosecutors, expose the judges he'd influenced, help dismantle the corruption from the inside. It was less than he deserved, but it was justice in the way the system understood it. Natalie fought. She hired the best lawyers money could buy, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, communications, her own confession to the police in those first hours when she believed she was untouchable. 30 years. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. She'd spend her best years behind bars. Isabella shocked everyone by testifying against her own father and grandfather. She talked about the psychology of manipulation, about how Adrian had groomed her since childhood to believe that family loyalty superseded morality. She talked about the moment she realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Her sentence was reduced to 8 years. Time served would count for half. She'd be out in 4, with the possibility of rehabilitation, of building something real. Adrian died in prison 2 months into his incarceration. Pneumonia. His body, already weakened by the bullet wound, simply gave up. I didn't feel sadness at his death. I didn't feel relief either. I just felt empty. The man who'd started all of this, who'd set the entire chain of events in motion, was gone. And nothing changed. My mother was still in pain. Victor was still in prison. My sister was still waiting to be born into a world that had nearly killed her before she even existed. The one thing that did change was my mother's recovery. She was released from the hospital after 6 weeks. The physical wounds healed faster than anyone expected. The psychological ones, those would take longer. Some days, she'd wake up screaming, reliving the moment the knife found her flesh. Other days, she'd sit silently, staring at nothing, processing the magnitude of betrayal from the man she'd married. But slowly, incrementally, she started to heal. My sister was born on a Tuesday in early spring. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. Healthy. A girl with my mother's eyes and, according to the nurses, an absolutely unbreakable will to live. My mother named her Sophia. Wisdom. Because that's what this entire ordeal had given us. Not happiness. Not closure. But wisdom. I held Sophia for the first time in the hospital, and I made a silent promise to her. I promised that I would tell her the truth about her family. I promised I wouldn't let her grow up in a lie like I had. And I promised I would spend my life making sure no one like Adrian Volkov could ever hurt her. Colin left his position with the Black Ops team. He said he was done with that life. He moved back into the city and started working with Kessler's team, but publicly, as a consultant for federal law enforcement, helping them understand organized crime from the inside. He said he wanted to build something instead of destroy it. Hunter disappeared. Just vanished one day after the trial ended. Colin said that was normal for people like him. They existed in the shadows, and when the shadows didn't need them anymore, they faded back into darkness. I hoped he found peace somewhere. And me? I quit my real estate job. I started working as a victim advocate for the federal court system. I help people who've been destroyed by organized crime navigate the legal system. I help them understand that testimony is an act of courage, that speaking truth is a rebellion against people who've built empires on silence. 6 months after Sophia was born, I was in the courthouse when the final sentencing came down for Adrian's organization. 30 members, 30 convictions, 30 sentences ranging from 5 years to life. The judge, a new judge, not Julian, read each name, each crime, each punishment. When it was over, My mother stood up. She looked at me. She looked at Colin. She looked at Sophia, who was sleeping peacefully in a carrier at my chest. "It's over," she said. But I knew better. It wasn't over. It would never be over. The scars would fade, but they'd always be there. The fear would diminish, but it would never completely disappear. The trust would rebuild, but it would never be as simple as it was before. What had happened was that we'd survived. We'd chosen truth over silence. We'd chosen justice over revenge. We'd chosen to live instead of letting the past destroy us. And that, I'd learned, was the only kind of ending that actually mattered.